Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Development Insights podcast, where we bring you ideas, experiences, and best practices from the real estate development industry. My name is Payam Nur Salehi. I'm the president of Dena Project Management, where we help real estate developers define, design, and deliver successful projects. My guest for this episode is Sherry Larjani. She's a real estate developer. She's a president and founder of Spotlight Development, a Toronto-based real estate firm specializing in high-density residential, commercial, and mixed-use projects. She established the company in 2010, and for a 15-year period, they've had immense growth, and they have very significant number of units and projects started and under construction, and they've made an impact, to say the least. In 2019, Sherry co-led a project called Reina Condos in Toronto, which was Canada's first all-female development team, aiming to address the gender disparity in the industry. That's one of the truths of the industry that we work in, and she was trying to make an impact, and I believe that she did. And throughout her work, the inclusivity, which is a concept that she defines in this episode, and the fact that we need to build communities that are more livable, have services, have medical services, have childcare services. This concept has been constant toward the work that they've been doing at that company. She has been featured on many different outlets, newsletters, and newspapers. And most notably, her work has been featured on the Opera magazine and New York Times. And she brings a lot of passion, excitement, and fire, as I would like to put it, to our conversation, and I would assume to everyday working on those projects. So, as always, you can find the most relevant information about this episode and our guest on our website, realestatedevelopmentinsights.com. That's all one phrase, realestatedevelopmentinsights.com. And please remember to subscribe to the show. Even better, please tell others about it and help us grow the show. Thank you and enjoy listening. Hi, Sherry. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Very excited to have you here. You're doing a lot of great stuff out there, a lot of big numbers that we're going to talk about on this episode about. Why don't we start by you introducing yourself to our audience?
Yeah, when you mention big numbers, big troubles come with big numbers these days. So we should mention that as well, just right off the bat before we start. So my name is Sherry Larjani. I own a company called Spotlight Development. We do for-profit and non-for-profit projects across GTHA, and we explore opportunities where we can help with the crisis of affordable housing in this country, and working with a lot of for-profit and non-for-profit partners on different types of projects and different models that we bring to the table. So that's what we do.
Perfect. Thank you. You have, according to your website, you have 10,000 units under development, and 7,000 of them are affordable. And I want to double click that a little bit later in the conversation. We want to go into why is that important and how hard it is to actually do something like that. But before we go there, you have a background in architecture. You flipped the switch one day and you decided to become a developer, or maybe walk us through that change.
No, I never practiced as an architect. I never even got all the way through getting my OAA license, as they say. I don't think I was the kind of person that was made to study and read books. I was more a hands-on kind of person. And my assumption of architecture when I finished university was that I am going to be designing all these beautiful, pretty tall buildings across the city. And reality hit, and it said, no, you're going to just be doing CAD work for somebody. And that's as far as you will get with the education you have. And I think I had ideas, and I think I had more of the entrepreneur kind of side of me showing up, where it led to my father-in-law coming to me, and he saw how miserable I was being and with all due respect to everybody who's doing what I used to do, being a cat monkey. I had my father-in-law coming to me and saying, hey, I believe in you. I'm going to invest in you if you are able to find a good piece of property and you're able to build it yourself. And I was like, oh, wow, what could be better than that? I'll be a builder. I obviously didn't know what that actually meant. And I didn't know any female builders at that time when I started. So that's how I got into the industry. I started by building single family homes, and I worked my way up, or down, whichever way you want to look at it.
Okay, so this is a question we typically ask at the end of the podcast, but take me to that moment of decision and give your own version or your own self, another version of your own self, a couple pointers. What did you do right? What did you do wrong? What would you do again? And what would you not do?
There's a lot of stuff that I would still do again. And if I were to look back and look at my old self, I would probably tell myself that there's a lot that I needed to learn step by step before wanting to step and jump and do a lot bigger and better. Right. Improvements have to come over time, and I think we have to give ourselves the time, right? So I tried to jump ahead of myself in many instances, doing a lot more because I was never satisfied. So I think it's very good to be satisfied with what you are doing at the time that you're doing it, and take a breath and look at it and enjoy it, appreciate it, instead of wanting to do more. And not that I regret it all. The fact that I wanted to do more led me to get to know so many other people, learn so much more, explore so many other opportunities. But what I've learned, and I've learned it now, I can't tell you that I've learned this 5 years ago, because it was the peak of the market. Everything was going, as we say, it was hunky-dory and everybody was happy. But now in this market that we're in, where we have nobody wanting to give financing, everybody who gives the money wants to take it away from you, and they'll literally take the rug from under your feet, while you're in the middle of doing something, and you get to know the reality of what this industry is all about. When the times are difficult, I would have told myself to take my steps a lot more cautiously. And one more thing that I would never have done is trusting a lot of the things that people say. It's easy to say, if it's a handshake, like I remember my dad used to work on handshakes, right? He was like, okay, if I give somebody my handshake, it's my word and it means something. Like, I know you're Persian, but in the old bazaar, like my dad was in a Persian rag business in the old bazaar in Iran, and that's how they did deals. So and so gave me their word. That's basically their deposit or their check. It's like you build a reputation for yourself. I have a feeling that in our industry, unfortunately, in the time that we're in now, it's very hard to trust everything that you see out there and everybody and the promises that they make. So if I was going back and giving my old self advice, I would tell myself to do not give promises based on other people's promises. Just give promises based on what you can control. And I think that's a very big lesson for all of us, because trusting your own guts and your own abilities is one thing, but counting on other people's word is something that I would not recommend to anyone to do. And that goes for many things in life and not just business.
We'll be right back.
Just a quick announcement. If you're thinking about financing your next project, your next rental project through CMHC, and in particular about the MLS Select program, please go to our website and check out our new webinar series. It's a free webinar series where we're talking about different aspects of the program, how you can qualify, how you can get more points. And we basically break down exactly what you need to know to access better terms, higher leverage, and longer amortization. Again, it's free. Again, you can find more information about it at mid-rise.ca/webinars, midrise.ca/webinars. Thank you. That's a good point. And to your point, the development business has a tendency of getting complicated very quickly on you, and things can go from good to great and good to not so great in a blink of an eye. Many things can happen, so that's definitely good advice. But let's go back to where we started and double click on that 10,000 units. So you've been in business for about 15 years based on my homework, and 15 years to 10,000 units. That's pretty aggressive. That's pretty ambitious, I would say. But the part that interests me even more is the 7,000 units, or 70% of those units, are at least planned or targeted to be affordable, or I read another thing on your website that says attainable, right? Walk us through that. How did that happen? Scale up so fast, and then also be able to do something that is not really an easy thing to do, or at least aim for.
So the scaling up fast was not hard. Because when you start to grow, you can feel a momentum and you feel like you can grow so much faster. Now, do I regret that? Yes, I definitely do, because there are many of those units that I might not be able to build right now. I might have, over time, since you've read that on my website, which is still there, I might have lost 2,000 units. But because either I chose not to work on it or do it any longer, but it's also because of the state of the market, right? However, the concept that you need to focus on and that you touched on is the 70% of the units being affordable or attainable. I think that's what I can take pride in and say I've actually achieved something that nobody else has. And that's being able to prove that you can achieve 70% affordability in the project. Now, the definition of affordability is something different to everyone, right? So if I were to come and tell you that I can do affordable, I don't mean that all of them are going to be literally by the affordability threshold that the city of Toronto dictates or the provincial government dictates, or if the federal government has a definition for it, it abides by that. But altogether, what it does is it takes into consideration every different demographic, different thresholds of income, and different people that are looking for housing, and it houses them within these projects, and it gives them a roof over their head. So when you think about it, that's a definition of affordability: being able to help anyone at the state that they're in be able to either afford to put a roof over their head or own a piece of real estate in this country. That to me is the definition of affordability. Now, many of my units, when it comes to rental, do follow the guidelines for the affordable housing within the different cities and the programs that the different municipalities offer. Is that 100% of the units? No. But there is 70% that we're talking about is definitely rental, and then attainable and affordable housing. Now, I think affordable ownership and attainable ownership is a discussion that keeps on getting put aside, and people don't think about it and don't talk about it. But in reality, when you think about a young professional in this country who just got out of school and is making, let's say, 75 to 80K, which is pretty good, they can't afford to buy a home. Now, that's a problem. It's interesting. One of the partners I work with, who is a not-for-profit organization who provides housing, their threshold of the people that they can help and become a homeowner is $75,000 of annual household annual income per year. Now, you can think about that. That could be a very large population of our country that needs help, that needs assistance. So affordable and attainable housing is a program, or not one program, it's many programs that would allow people to become homeowners or to just at least get a roof over their head and their family's head. Someone who comes to this country as a new immigrant is going to be qualifying for that. Someone who just got out of university and doesn't have rich parents to give them a handout or a gift so that they can go and buy a unit could qualify for that. So that's the big portion of the population that we care about, as well as the people that cannot afford it, the people who are homeless or they can't find a place to live because they have no income, or that they're on ODSP, or they have other disabilities. So the way we look at housing is very wholesome. We're not saying we're just building housing so that it can look pretty. No, we like that. We do that. But we're not saying that's the only type of housing you can do. We're saying you have to be thinking of a community as inclusively as possible, so that you can make sure that everybody's included when you're talking about the subject of housing. And that's how I personally see housing and how I see the housing crisis being addressed.
You touched on a whole bunch of different things that I want to now double click even more. Is it fair to say what your definition of affordable and attainable is basically giving people options? Like we're not, to your point, and I've been involved in projects that you build for non-for-profit and also like low-income housing, and there are thresholds that are significantly low, the product shows itself, and there's probably a missing area which you're trying to target that is a little bit better than that, but it's also not necessarily a high-end luxury unit. Is that a fair way of putting it?
So I think I want to go back to the beginning of your sentence. It's not like I'm giving people options. I'm giving them a way out, because it's not like I can give them so many options. Our economy, where we are at in this country does not allow for options. It allows for helping hand or a roof over somebody's head through a program, which, yes, you can call it as an option. But I think when you say option, it sounds too luxurious for the we're in right now, because you have an option of living here or you have an option of living there. You can buy a 5,000 square foot or you can.
Fair enough.
No,
Yeah.
it's not option. It's I'm giving an ability to people to have a place to live in. It's empowering people to be able to have a roof over their head. I think, to me, that's a better definition than using the word option, because of the way that our economy is going and the way that our housing industry is or not progressing or
Not
progressing
progressing.
backwards. It's like literally that's the way I see it, right? Interesting, because I will tell you this, and as much as I still feel like I have a lot of setbacks, and I've had a lot of setbacks throughout the work I've been doing to fight for affordable housing. I started on this journey 6 years ago. Nobody was talking about affordable housing then. Everybody was telling me, if I had partnerships, everybody was telling me, Sherry, pay the Section 37 and let's just call it a day. Don't mention affordable housing in front of the counselor. Don't do this, don't do that. Now it has become the word of the day. Everybody is talking about affordable housing. Everybody calls their projects affordable, even though they're not affordable, because that's the word of the day. Like, if you tell me what's the word of the day, and I think Stories published an article that said the story of the year is receiverships. I say it's not. It's affordable housing. Like, not talking about it. It's coming up with solutions to tackle this crisis. And I tell you, affordable housing is not the solution. Real policy changes is the solution, whether it's housing, affordable housing, luxury housing, whatever you want to call it. It's the crisis that we're in is affecting everybody in the industry, and it needs to be addressed through proper policy.
So let's talk about that, because that's one of the things I'm interested in hearing your ideas. Let's assume for a second that you're sitting in Mark Carney's office or Doug Ford's office or Mayor Chow's office, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have 10 minutes.
I will speak differently in every one of their offices, though, I should tell you.
I have time, but I want to respect yours. So tell me, take a pick and say, what would be the one policy change, regulation that you would advocate for in that 10 minutes with one of these decision makers?
First of all, I'll get all three of them in the same room. That's what I will do. I will not go to their offices one by one, because they need to collaborate with each other. They need to talk to each other, and with all due respect to all three of them, and I understand that they do talk to each other through their ministers and through their whatever systems that they have in place. What I would do, if I were to go to them individually, and if I had them all in the same room, I would probably say the exact same thing to every single one of them. To Mayor Chow, I would say, please listen to the people that are talking to you. I don't think you're understanding that this crisis is affecting everyone, and that the housing crisis needs her intervention, and her real intervention, not just celebrating 50 units here, 20 units there. It needs real intervention, and it needs her to give her time of the day to the people who are working their butts off to actually build housing, including me. And if I were to sit in front of the provincial government, I would tell them that you already see the crisis that we're in, and you see how the municipalities aren't doing the jobs that they're supposed to do at many points and times. I would come and implement policies where it takes the power out of the hand of some of the politicians at different levels. And I'm not talking about mayors, but I'm talking about overall. Like, I would not allow every level of government and every person involved in government to talk about housing and to have a say about how housing is supposed to be built in their ward, in their area, in their location. That too much power and too much government is helping to ruin this industry more than it should. And I would tell him to start investing money in and they are doing that through some of the funds that they are allocating. But I would say that start doing that a lot faster and not quicker, and try to use a lot of the funding and the money that you are going to provide and leave it as guarantees. So leave it as guarantees so that the non-for-profit organizations who are not backed by billions and billions of assets, or they're not backed by family money, or even people like me who want to build affordable housing can access and use those guarantees, those financial guarantees, and actually build something. Because the guarantees is a stopping block for many of the projects that are at scale to move through. And if I were to speak to Mr. Carney, I would tell him we don't need more government. We don't need another level of government to interfere with the housing policies and create more policies. I would say invest everything that you wanted to invest in creating new form of government to call Build Canada or whatever fancy name you want to call it today, and focus the energy and that group and ability of the people that you want to hire and put them in a place where they can make decisions faster so that CMAC can give out funding faster so that my application doesn't have to take a year for it to be approved to get construction financing because the underwriters are taking their time and because everything is done slow. Speed up government. And not more government, speed up government. So if you need to implement programs or you need to hire more people, hire it for the programs that are already there, existing, and allow those programs to run faster and quicker and less red tape so that the funding can be going out so that projects can get built. And that's what I would say, at least in a 10 minutes time I can go on and on. So I think these three.
I think we get the image. And I think I would say that you're not the first guest on this podcast to bring up too much government and too much government interference, too many stakeholders in the approval process through different levels. It drives you crazy sometimes. Most of the time it drives you crazy. And so I definitely think you're right over there. Let's talk about some of your projects that you've done so far. I was going through your projects, and there are very interesting themes running through all of them, connecting them together. Inclusivity being one of the big ones. What does that mean? Why is it important?
Inclusivity means everyone is in. Everybody can play the game of being a homeowner. Everybody can play the game of being able to thrive, prosper, do better. To me, it doesn't matter what background you have, where you come from, money you have. You should be able to have the basic human needs and rights, and that is housing, food, and security, safety. So in my communities, what I focus on is making sure that those are addressed. First, I can get a roof over your head. But believe me, that's not enough. And I think, unfortunately, that's what we keep on looking at. Hey, let's just build more housing. Building more housing without the services, without the community benefits that are required to help people survive and thrive and prosper is not the way to do it. If you were to build housing, you have to think about building housing as part of a community. If you're building a small scale, then you need to look at it in a bigger scale of the community you're going in. But if you're building large scale projects, which could be master plan communities or many towers in a bigger site, you should think of it as a community, and you need to address the needs of that community and the people that are going to be living within your buildings. And that's how I see it. And that's why I think inclusivity is very important, because we all need the same things at the end of the day. Some of us have it better than others, but we all need the same things.
And just to clarify for our listeners, based on what I saw on your projects, these include some things like having a daycare as part of the plan,
not just the daycare. No. I'm going to correct you on that.
Okay.
I can build a daycare, and there are daycares everywhere. But a daycare that's 9 to 5 is not going to help me, and it's not going to help the community. It's not going to help the single parent that needs to go and do a shift work so she or he can put food on the table. 24-hour childcare. And the childcare is for kids under the age of 16. Because look at the new immigrants that come to this country. And I go back to new immigrants because I see them struggling. Go back and look at the shift workers, the families that are single parents without a help of a family that need to work as that are nurses, that are factory workers, that are firefighters, police officers. If they don't have a place that keeps their kids secure, and when we say kids, anyone under the age of 16 to me is a kid. Look at the areas where the crime is more than anywhere else in our city. The reason there's so much crime is that kids are unsupervised at a young age or left under the supervision of another young kid, and they get exposed because they get hungry. They go out there and somebody says, hey, move this from here to there. They get exposed to crime. They get exposed to so many things that they shouldn't be exposed to. The way I see how daycare working is that you keep kids after the 5 o'clock. And if it's 6:01, I don't have to pay $25 or $50, whatever the amount is, per minute till I pick up my kid. A lot of families can't even afford that. So you can imagine how much of a hardship that is on many families and many parents. In my opinion, the program needs to be defined better. And I believe in a 24-hour childcare because I believe in keeping kids safe, secure, fed. And with that, I think I am tackling the problem at the beginning. Instead of wanting to find a solution for it and reforming the bail system, a system in the juvenile halls and where I'm keeping all the youth, I will address it from the beginning because I keep them secure, I educate them, I feed them, and using all of those tools, I can get to a place where I need less of everything else that I said in the beginning, the reforms that we have in place. So that's how I see daycare. So my definition of daycare is just a bit different.
Thank you for that elaboration. I very much appreciate the passion you bring to that conversation. I'm going to follow on that thread of passion there. You've also done a project by all-female team, which makes me very happy and makes me very interested to ask more about it. My mom is an architect, a retired architect, and I know how those teams worked, and a lot of the time they didn't get the credit for it. Was that a driving factor, or why was it important for you to have that claim there?
We love to say how the world has changed and things are different and there's no difference between a man and a woman and you can do everything that a man wants to do. Now, believe me, I am one of the biggest advocates for it because I always said anything that a guy does or a man does, I can do and I could probably do it better. That's not an accurate statement and I can't. So I understand my limits. But when it comes to something like being a developer, I remember when I started in this industry, before I started in this industry, and as I was going through school, and I used this over and over, and unfortunately, when I used to say it before, it sounded better, but the idea of a private developer to me was Trump. Someone that looks like Trump, a white, old, rich person. So I had to work my way up as a young immigrant, if I want to say color woman that wanted to come in and do development. I had to find a seat at the table. Now, there were many people who supported me, many of the men in the industry that I worked with that lifted me up, gave me a helping hand, mentored me, and paved the way for me. But there were also those who were at every step of the way tried to put me in my place, as they say, right? Or tell me that I don't belong in this industry, whether it was on a job site, whether it was building a home. So I had to learn the hard way that that's a possible way of doing it. So when Taya Cook from Urban Capital came to me and said, see this happening so often, and I do this kind of a project, I said, I'm all in. Because I can see how we are not seeing all the women that are behind the scenes working on these projects. They're sort of being not ignored, but they're just not given the credit that they need to be given, and they need to be showcased. So the idea of the Reina project was that we wanted to showcase all these women that are working behind the scene and also show that being a developer in the city and being a woman, they can go hand in hand. So you can do both. I remember when I was starting in this industry, the one name I used to hear always was Judy De Lorenza. It was just the only woman that I knew. And then later on, it was Eve Lewis. So it was like a unicorn. You couldn't find them. And I was called a unicorn many times by many people that sent me an email that, oh my God, you guys are a unicorn. That was a very sad thing to hear. So we had to pave the way so that it would show other young women that there is an opportunity for you also to be in that position and do what a developer does. If you're coming from an engineering field, architecture field, law, absolutely anything. And that's the reason behind the Reina projects. And I always say that, and I say it again now, the elite experience, because we loved getting all the attention we got. New York Times, who would have thought that, what I used to, like, New York Times to me was such a big deal that when I was published in New York Times, I was like, oh my God. And when I was published in Oprah magazine and I 8 months pregnant, I was like, oh, I'm in Oprah magazine. Big deal. But why am I there? Because as a woman, I did something that the men had been doing forever. So it's a bittersweet moment because you love the publicity, you love the attention, but you also think that, imagine that in this day and age where we are, where being a woman, doing something that the men have been doing forever, makes you important, or important enough to be written about, right?
Very happy you said all those things. I have to say that when I first read about the Reina project and how the team and development, it made me think for a second, because when we go through these design meetings, we have a lot of consultants that are very brilliant women that are working on the projects. Not many times you hear from them publicly, but and I went back to my own website where we do the podcast, and I'm looking at my guest list. I have Kara Sloat there, which I'm very grateful to her for her leadership in what she's doing, and you're going to be the second one probably. But that also shows as not good a sample of what's going on out there, and that kind of inspired to change things up a little bit. I'm going to ask you a personal question. We've been talking for about 30 minutes now, and you have that burning fire mission sense coming through the interview here. And I'm a lucky person. I've had the pleasure of working with many different developers in different capacities throughout the 20 odd years that I've been doing this. And I've learned a lot of great people, mission, and this level of energy and passion and burning fire.
Wow.
Where does that come from?
That's a very interesting question. First of all, thank you. I take that as a compliment. Thank you. But where does it come from? It comes from all the setbacks that I had to deal with. It comes from everything I see and the fact that I have some empathy. I think working with empathy in any field that you're in brings or sheds a different light on everything that you do. So you look at your work from a different angle, not just from, and again, don't get me wrong, I am in this industry to make money like everybody else is. I'm not going to sit here and say, I'm doing this for the goodness of my heart. But I can still do business and do it for the goodness of my heart at the same time. And I think, that's the trick. That's what took me so long to figure out. How do I do it? How do I find a balance between doing them both? Let's just say I have not had that much support wanting to do that. I'm wanting to be the pioneer to do housing that has feelings. Like I like to call what I do building housing with feelings.
That's a good way of putting it. You are involved, in addition to development, you're involved in a lot of non-profit stuff and work, ARIA Foundation in particular, and a lot of work with underprivileged sections of society. Maybe walk us through that a little bit. Because again, I think that my guess is that it's probably coming from the same place of fire.
Well, I think I don't come from a development family. I did not have the privilege of learning from my family the ins and outs of the business. So I had to learn it on my own. And the only way I could have learned it on my own was to be partnering with the developers in the city and finding a seat at the table. Now, I've earned that with a lot of difficulty. And I had to put myself through a lot of different things to be able to find that seat at the table where it said, hey, I have a partnership in this deal, or I own this property, or I put money here, so I need a seat at the table. That's how I gained my seat at the table, given the way our industry works. But I've also had a lot of people that mentored me without asking for anything in return. But the for-profit side of the business, I learned through them, but I didn't know anything about how the not-for-profit world runs. And That is a completely different story. It has its own, there's so much they do, and there's so little they get and so little they receive. So I think for me, I needed to learn, and I've partnered with a lot of not-for-profit organizations. And through the partnership with the not-for-profit organizations, I guess they saw that I have some passion, and I was invited to sit on the boards of different not-for-profit organizations, helping with different things, housing or other matters that they were dealing with. And through that, I learned how to be a not-for-profit and how these not-for-profits help, because they're there's a learning curve, and in order for me to learn that, it was partnerships with not-for-profits and eventually sitting on their boards or acting as some part of their organization, so that I can learn more. And yes, the passion has always been there. It's always there. I was raised by a very philanthropic father, so because of that, I think that's just in me. I never
It's a set of values that were inherited through the family, and that's a good thing. What do you have? What words of wisdom do you have for someone who's not been involved in non-for-profit side and have been on the fence, thinking, "Is there anything I can do? Can I jump over and try and help?" Or the opposite, "There's nothing I can help with." Are there any areas of interest that you say, you know what, you could really people could really come to table and hold positions and try and help in these particular ways? Any words of wisdom?
Yeah, I'm gonna actually turn that question around and answer it in a different way. I am going to talk about all the board members of all non-for-profit organizations. Now, remember, the non-for-profits are the non-for-profits, but the board members of those non-for-profits are people that come from the industry, that people that are not necessarily a community or need the helps from those not-for-profits. They sit there in a position so that they can bring something to the table so that it can help those non-for-profit organizations do better, thrive, and help more people. When you're sitting as a board member, you got to put everything that you have, whether it is for or against certain things, certain groups, certain ways of doing things, aside, and then go sit there as bipartisan, as they say, as bipartisan as possible, and think about the people that you're helping. Because what I find in so many of the boards is that I've had some interactions with, not that I sit on them, no, the boards that were making decisions on certain things I was doing. The way that they would approach it was very much personal. Like, it shouldn't be personal. It should be that you are doing the work for the people that you're going to be servicing, and you should be paying attention to that. So I say go with an open mind as a board member into any board that you want to step in it, and go into that position with the pure intention of helping the community that your not-for-profit organization helps. And I think that's the best advice I can give, because those are the groups and the people that are actually helping these not-for-profits make decisions and do things that they can't otherwise do without their boards.
Basically, try to be as productive and effectively involved as you can, basically.
Yes,
is what you're
exactly.
saying. Okay. I want to take a look at the future. We talked about the past. We talked about a little bit about the current situation in the market. Let's talk about the future. I want to talk about I want to talk about the future of. You don't want to talk about the future?
No problem talking about the future.
Let's take a stab at it. What does the next 3 to 5 years look like in our construction development, or generally as a whole in our city as a community? Look like from your perspective, and what role you're hoping your company, your team, your group, your entity is going to play in that period? And I preface that by saying that recently we heard numbers about 40,000 people being laid off for the past few months. I'm a construction manager, and I get calls from a number of different trades all day, every day, that are down to their last key people on their team that they don't want to lose. People they've worked with for 2 decades, they don't want to get rid of. And they're basically struggling. Where are we headed?
Have you ever watched a scary movie?
I think I'm watching one right now.
That's exactly what I was going to say. We're watching a scary movie, and our future is like a scary movie. Either we're going to survive by killing the villain, or there's going to be a second or third movie or sequel coming. That's how I see it. At this point, from where I stand, I think we need to survive. If it has become a game of survival, right? It's very difficult. For some of us, it will be easy. When I say some of us, I mean some of us in the building industry who have been through this 30 years ago or 20 years ago. Like I remember in the 90s, I was a kid and I know people were going through it. So they have learned how to survive and they've made decisions based on the experiences they've had then. Now we're going through it as young entrepreneurs that are doing it and are going through it. We need to learn how to survive and how to come out of this in one piece, as they say, right? I'm not saying come out of it successfully because I don't know what that would mean. I don't know, but I would say that's how I would see it, right? That to me, we're literally living in a scary movie at this point. So that's how I would unfortunately see the future, because all the things that you hear, all the things that you see just keeps you up at night, right? And you're just wondering, where is this industry going to? And I think it's not just one person, it's everybody. It doesn't matter how mighty and big you are. Again, if you've lived through it, pass, and you're just going to go through it. But for many of us, it's a new experience. So we need to survive it. But what I want to do and what I focus on and what I focus a lot of my energy, a lot of my passion and a lot of my money in this couple of years has been advocating for the right type of housing, advocating for the right type of community, advocating for those 40,000 people that you're talking about that were never meant to be part of the people who are going to need a helping hand, but are now, because of the economic disasters that we're dealing with, are going to be part of the groups that might need the helping hand to put food on their table, to have a roof over their head, to send their kids to school, put a pair of shoes on their kids. They were never imagined that would be what they would be dealing with, but they could be dealing with it right now. So I like to do a lot of advocacy. And I'm not, again, as I said, I am a for-profit builder who figured out how to help the non-for-profit and how to help the housing crisis from the bottom up, not from the top down. So I think that's what I would see as my role. I stay a developer and I build my 10,000 units or not, I can still talk and I can still be a voice for the housing industry, because I have seen the good and the bad, and I also see the problems that we have, whether it is government policies and whether it is through many other ways that the housing industry is in trouble.
I appreciate that. Is there a question that I haven't asked you, or do you have any final parting thoughts that you would want to share with our audience?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about it the other day. I ran into something that got me thinking again about this topic. And I know you didn't ask me about this, but I will say this not just to the people in the industry. I want to say this to all of us as humans, celebrating people's demise. I remember, and I tell you this as a personal story. When I got into New York Times, and I thought it was a very big deal, I might have gotten a couple of calls about, oh, there was a written about you, and oh my God, I saw you in New York Times, or I saw you in Oprah magazine. Good for you. Good on you. And I was celebrated, colleagues, by friends. But I tell you, I can count the number of people that called me with my fingers. But if there is anything bad that happens, or if there's a single bad story, it becomes the news of the day. I told one of my friends when something like that happened to me, I said, I never knew I'm that important, and I never knew I was that popular up until some bad news or something that was a trouble I was in became a story of the day. Up until then, no one bothered to say, hey, kudos to you for all the work you're doing, or good on you for doing that, or can I help in any way? But when you become the story of the day in a negative light, everybody starts talking about it. The news spreads out to all the other countries as well. Believe me, we should stop doing that. We should stop being happy about other people's demise or negative stories or unhappy stories. We should be celebrating the happy moments and be quiet when there is bad and sad stories and try to help. And I think if we as humans learn to do that, no matter what, we can do a lot better in this world. So this is not just in my industry, this is just as an overall, but I see it in our industry way too often where I hear about all of these things that are happening to people, none of it good, but it's always becomes the topic of the conversation. Oh, did you hear this? Did you read that? Did you know that they're doing this? Why don't we talk about the good stuff? Why don't we think about all the things that they've been working on for a very long time and not talk about the troubles as much as it's interesting to people? Let's just make the good news the interesting topic of the day and not the bad.
I very much appreciate what you just said. And I have to say, and I don't want to name names here, but a while ago, a few big players and a few long-term players in our market started having very serious issues and having started going down. And I remember that a lot of angry people, a lot of people were pissed, pre-purchase units, they had to go through Therion, they had to go through getting deposits back. And I was just, for a second, I thought, what if I was that guy, which I kind of knew personally. And I'm thinking, this guy probably started 30, 40 years ago on his own, had a little bit of resources, built 30, 40 years, provided jobs, took tons of risks, put a whole bunch of people's kids to school. And yes, they probably made some bad decisions toward the end, over-leveraged themselves, and all of a sudden the perfect storm is taking them down. Does not mean that worked, because that there's one particular case, which I don't want to name names, but that I know the family somewhat closely, and I'm like, these guys were good guys. They did make bad decisions sometimes toward the end, and it didn't pay off. It did sometimes, and you know this firsthand. Risky business development is probably one of the riskiest business anyone would ever take on.
I hear you. I agree with you. And I tell you, and I'm not even sure if I'm supposed to be saying this in a podcast, but I will go back to all those people who talk negatively and go back and say, if you have the guts to go and get yourself under the pressure and the guarantee and the work and the load of the work that is required to do what you were planning on doing, then come and have the guts to talk about that person who did it, whether successfully or unsuccessfully. That's what I would get to. I don't care where you're at. I don't care about the decisions you made. The decisions are made based on the time and the day you're in and the situation you're in at that moment. Nobody has a crystal ball and nobody knows what the future holds. So give the credit to the people who take the risks on behalf of everybody else who doesn't take the risk. And as you said, employ people, put them through their lives by paying their livelihoods and providing all the things that they provide for their communities. Give the credit where the credit is due. If you have the guts to do what they did, comment on it. But if you don't, I suggest you sit back quietly and watch them probably get themselves out of wherever they are. That's my opinion.
Good point. Thank you very much, Sherry. This has been a pleasure. It was a very passionate conversation. I really much enjoyed it. I wish you the best of luck. It's going to be, like you said, it's going to be a very tough few years ahead of us, but looks of it, unless a miracle happens, which sometimes they do. We hope for the best and prepare for the worst, and hopefully we get through it together.
Hopefully we all survive.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Just one last thing before you leave. We've created a document called Real Estate Development Toolbox, which you can download for free from our website at realestatedevelopmentinsights.com. This document is basically the result of us asking our network and our listeners, what is a top tool that you use on a daily basis to keep yourself aware of information that's going on in the industry, the changes, the trends, the technologies, the regulations, and or if you the tools that you use to make sure that you deliver quality results to your clients and customers, the tools that help you with productivity in what you do, and also any softwares, specialized softwares that you think are useful to share with others. So if you think there are resources that you're using on a daily basis and you would like others to know about them, please make sure to let us know, and we will make sure to include it in the next iteration of this toolbox. Thank you very much, and I hope you find this document useful.